The acquisition. The crystalline spires of Trading Station Omega pierced the violet nebula like shards of broken glass. Inside, Queen Zalara of the Crystalline Empire moved through the infamous slave markets with deliberate grace, her translucent form catching starlight and scattering it in rainbow patterns across the grimy walls. Her royal guard, formed of living crystal like herself but darker and more angular, maintained a protective formation around her. Your Radiance, the station master, a gelatinous being named Vorex, oozed forward with excessive ceremony. Had we known you would honor us with your presence. Zalara raised a crystalline hand, silencing him. I come unannounced precisely to see things as they truly are. Her voice chimed like perfect bells, but carried an edge sharp enough to cut. The slave market sprawled before them, a maze of containment fields holding beings from across the known galaxy. Some glowed with internal light, others shifted through impossible geometries, and a few seemed to be made of living shadow. Yet none held Zalara's attention for more than a moment. Perhaps your Radiance would be interested in our newest acquisition? Vorex gestured toward a distant cell. A quantum dancer from the Pleiades cluster? They're said to exist in 12 dimensions simultaneously. But Zalara had already spotted something far more interesting. In the furthest corner, in a simple containment field that seemed almost an afterthought, stood a human male. Unlike the other captives who either cowered or raged, he stood perfectly still, watching everything with calm attention. That one, Zalara said, moving closer. The human wore standard prisoner garb, but somehow made it look like a uniform. His dark skin contrasted with startlingly pale eyes, and a series of scars traced patterns across his visible skin that seemed almost deliberate. Your Radiance, her chief advisor, Crystal Lord Nexus, stepped forward. Humans are considered extremely dangerous. They're barely civilized, still confined to their home system. The containment protocols for such a primitive species are untested. The human's lips curved slightly at this assessment, but he remained silent. Does it speak? Zalara asked Vorex. I speak for myself, the human said before Vorex could answer. His voice was deep and smooth, with an accent Zalara had never heard before. My name is Kai Harrison. One of Zalara's guards stepped forward, crystal blade humming. You will show proper respect to her Radiance. Peace, Zalara commanded, fascinated. You speak Imperial Standard without translation implants. How? Humans are quick learners, Kai replied, then added with subtle irony, your Radiance. The price? Zalara asked Vorex. The station master named a sum that made even her guards shift uncomfortably. It was enough to buy a small moon. Done, Zalara said immediately. Your Radiance, Nexus protested. This is highly irregular. We know nothing of human biology, their psychological patterns, Then we shall learn, Zalara cut him off. She turned back to Kai. You will be the first human in the Crystal Palace. I trust you understand the honor this represents? Kai bowed slightly, a gesture that somehow managed to look both respectful and faintly amused. I look forward to exceeding your expectations, your Radiance. As the containment field dropped and crystalline restraints were placed on Kai's limbs, Zalara noticed something odd. Despite his situation, despite the heavy restraints, despite facing an unknown future, Kai looked satisfied, almost as if she dismissed the thought. After all, what could a simple slave possibly have to be pleased about? As her royal procession left the market with their new acquisition, none of them noticed the small device hidden in Vorex's office beginning to transmit on frequencies no one in the known galaxy was supposed to possess. None of them saw the message it sent, encoded in mathematics too advanced for their systems to detect. Phase 1 complete. Operation Crystal Dawn is now active. The game had begun. The test of loyalty. The Crystal Palace's research wing hummed with unusual activity. 2 weeks had passed since Queen Zalara brought the human to her stronghold, and her scientists were still struggling to make sense of their findings. Their latest tests had produced results that defied their understanding of biology. Impossible, muttered lead researcher Echo, her crystalline form flickering with agitation. Run the endurance assessment again. Kai stood on the testing platform, not a drop of sweat on his skin despite having run for 4 hours straight. The monitoring crystals showed his vital signs actually improving over time, as if his body was adapting to the stress in real time. Fascinating, Echo's assistant whispered. His cellular structure appears to be self-optimizing. We've never seen anything like it. From her private observation chamber above, Zalara watched with growing interest. She had collected specimens from 1,000 worlds, but none quite like this. Most broke within days of arriving at the palace, their spirit crumbling or their bodies failing. But Kai seemed to grow stronger, more focused, more present with each passing day. Your radiance! Crystal Lord Nexus appeared at her side, his form darkened with concern. There's something you should see. He projected a security recording from the previous night. It showed Kai in his containment cell, but instead of sleeping, he was moving through complex sequences of motions, part dance, part combat training. His movements were precise, deliberate, and far more advanced than anything a primitive species should know. He's aware of our surveillance, Nexus said. He's showing us these capabilities intentionally. The question is, why? Before Zalara could respond, alarms blared throughout the palace. Red emergency crystals pulsed along every corridor. Breach in the royal chambers. A guard's voice crackled through the communication crystal. The queen's life is in danger. Zalara turned to rush to her chambers, but Nexus grabbed her arm. Your radiance, wait. We must get you to the secure bunker. A massive explosion rocked the research wing. Through the smoke, 3 assassins in phase-shift armor materialized. Their weapons were aimed at Zalara's heart. The queen dies today, one announced, finger tightening on the trigger. What happened next occurred so quickly that even the palace's high-speed recording crystals barely captured it. Kai, still on the testing platform, moved with impossible speed. He grabbed a crystalline testing rod and threw it with perfect accuracy, piercing the lead assassin's phase-shift armor at its weakest point. In the same motion, he vaulted over the testing equipment, using his restraints as an improvised weapon to disarm the second assassin. The third attacker managed to fire, but Kai had already pulled Zalara down, the energy blast passing harmlessly overhead. Within seconds, all 3 assassins lay unconscious, and Kai stood protectively in front of the queen, his restraint somehow still attached but clearly not hindering him in the slightest. Impossible, Nexus whispered. Those restraints were designed to hold beings 10 times stronger than humans. About that, Kai said calmly, still scanning for threats. We need to talk about your empire's rather outdated information regarding human capabilities. You could have escaped at any time, Zalara realized, rising gracefully to her feet. Yes. Then why stay? Kai turned to face her, his pale eyes intense. Because, your radiance, there are forces within your empire who want you dead. Forces that fear the changes you represent. These assassins weren't working alone. How could you know this? The same way I know there will be another attempt within the hour. A more sophisticated one. He glanced at the palace's security crystals. Your entire security system has been compromised. Right now, we can trust no one except the people in this room. Nexus stepped forward, crystal blade drawn. This is absurd. He's clearly part of the assassination plot. Why else would a human allow himself to be captured and brought here? To protect her, Kai said simply. Whether you believe it or not, there are those who see great potential in Queen Zalara. Potential for change. For progress. The old guard fears this, but others. He smiled slightly. Others have gone to great lengths to ensure she survives long enough to realize that potential. Another explosion rocked the palace, closer this time. Emergency signals flashed from multiple sectors. Your radiance. Kai held out his hand to Zalara. I know you have no reason to trust me. I'm a slave, a primitive, an unknown variable. But right now, I'm also your best chance at survival. Will you trust me? Zalara looked at his offered hand, then at the chaos erupting around them. In all her centuries of rule, she had never faced a decision quite like this. Everything she knew about humans, about slaves, about the proper order of things, told her to refuse. But there was something in Kai's eyes, uncertainty and strength, that called to something deep within her crystalline core. She made her decision. Lead the way, she said, taking his hand. What followed would be remembered as the longest night in the Crystal Palace's history. As rebels seized control of sector after sector, as ancient alliances shattered and new ones formed, as secrets centuries-old came to light, Queen Zalara would learn that everything she thought she knew about humans, about her empire, and about herself, was about to change forever. And Kai Harrison, the slave who was never really a slave, would prove to be either her salvation or her doom. The hidden truth. Deep within the Crystal Palace's forgotten maintenance tunnels, Queen Zalara watched as Kai Harrison, her supposed slave, effortlessly bypassed security systems that even her best technicians couldn't crack. They had been on the run for hours, staying ahead of the rebels who had seized control of the palace's upper levels. These systems, Zalara observed, her crystalline form dimmed to avoid detection, you interface with them as if you've known them all your life. Kai's fingers danced across another crystal control panel, rerouting power from the rebels' strongholds. That's because I have. Or rather, humanity has been studying your technology for longer than you might believe. He paused, turning to face her. Your radiance, it's time you learned the truth about Earth. A small holographic projector emerged from his palm, technology far more advanced than anything in the Crystal Empire. The maintenance tunnel filled with a three-dimensional map of the galaxy, but not as Zalara knew it. Hundreds of points of light marked human settlements, stations, and fleets that shouldn't exist. Impossible, she whispered. Your species is confined to a single system. No, Kai said gently. That's what we wanted you to believe. Humanity reached the stars 3 centuries ago. While your empire expanded through conquest, we grew through stealth and patience. Every primitive human slave sold in your markets was a volunteer, gathering intelligence, waiting for the right moment. The map zoomed in on the Crystal Empire's territory, revealing hidden human observation posts, secret bases, and cloaked shipyards that had operated undetected for decades. Why reveal this now? Zalara demanded. Why to me? Before Kai could answer, Crystal Lord Nexus's voice echoed through the emergency channels. Attention all loyal forces. Queen Zalara has been corrupted by the human slave. She is no longer fit to rule. In accordance with ancient law, I hereby assume control of the Crystal Empire. The human specimen must be terminated, and the queen, contained. That's why, Kai said grimly. Nexus isn't acting alone. There's a faction within your empire that's discovered fragments of the truth about humanity. They fear what will happen when the full extent of human civilization is revealed. They'd rather destroy everything you've built than risk change. A distant explosion rocked the tunnels. Emergency crystals pulsed with warning lights. They're sealing off the maintenance levels, Zalara realized. We'll be trapped. Not quite. Kai pressed his hand against a seemingly solid wall, revealing a hidden passage that shouldn't exist. Like I said, we've been preparing for a long time. As they hurried through the secret corridor, Zalara's mind raced. The technological gap. If humans are this advanced, why not simply conquer us? Because that's not who we are anymore. Kai's voice softened. Humanity's past is stained with conquest and slavery. We grew beyond that. Now we help other civilizations do the same, but it has to come from within. We've been waiting for a leader strong enough to guide the Crystal Empire toward change. They emerged into a vast chamber deep beneath the palace, a hidden command center filled with technology beyond anything Zalara had seen. Screens showed the entire palace, the city beyond, and orbital space where massive ships were beginning to emerge from cloaking fields. Your Radiance, Kai said formally. Welcome to Operation Crystal Dawn. For the past 50 years, we've identified elements within your empire ready for change. Scientists, philosophers, reformers, all waiting for the right moment. When you began questioning the old ways, showing mercy where others demanded cruelty, we knew you were the one we'd been waiting for. You manipulated me, Zalara said, but there was more wonder than accusation in her tone. We gave you opportunities. Every choice was yours. Kai activated a communication panel. And now you have another choice to make. The screen showed more human ships decloaking in orbit, their design elegant and organic, unlike anything in known space. At the same time, Rebel forces loyal to Nexus were moving through the palace, eliminating any resistance. The human fleet can end this rebellion in minutes, Kai explained. But that would just replace one form of conquest with another. True change must come from you. He turned to face her fully. The question is, what kind of ruler do you want to be? What kind of empire do you want to lead? Zalara stared at the displays, watching her world transform before her eyes. Everything she believed about humanity, about her own empire's superiority, had been built on carefully constructed illusions. Yet instead of feeling diminished, she felt something else, hope. Show me, she said finally. Show me everything. About Earth, about humanity's true history. If I'm to lead my people into a new era, I need to understand what that really means. Kai smiled. Not the careful smile of a slave, but the genuine warmth of an equal. That's exactly why we chose you. As he began to share humanity's true story, neither of them noticed Crystal Lord Nexus's forces discovering another secret entrance to the maintenance tunnels. The next few hours would determine not just their fate, but the future of two civilizations. And somewhere above them, hidden in the palace's highest tower, an ancient crystal began to pulse with strange energy, a piece of technology so old that even humanity's advanced sensors couldn't detect it. The game was far from over. The Alliance. The ancient throne room of the Crystal Palace blazed with weapons fire. Rebel forces under Crystal Lord Nexus had breached the hidden command center, forcing Queen Zalara and Kai to retreat to the very heart of her empire. Now they stood before the Crystal Throne itself, surrounded by loyal guards who had answered Zalara's emergency beacon. Your Radiance, Nexus's voice boomed through the palace communications. Surrender now, and we may yet preserve some fragment of our civilization before these humans corrupt it entirely. Zalara stood tall, her crystalline form radiating with newfound purpose. In the hours since learning humanity's true nature, she had absorbed centuries of hidden history. The knowledge had transformed her as surely as any physical change. Corrupt, she responded, her voice carrying to every corner of the palace. Or elevate. You speak of preservation, Nexus, but what you truly fear is growth. The massive doors to the throne room shuddered under heavy assault. Kai moved to a defensive position, the last of his pretense at being a simple slave completely abandoned. He now wore advanced armor that seemed to flow like liquid metal, far beyond Crystal Empire technology. Your Radiance, he said urgently, the human fleet awaits your signal. One word from you, and this rebellion ends. Zalara raised her hand to the crystal throne, where ancient patterns began to pulse with strange light. No, as you said, true change must come from within. She turned to her loyal guards. My people, you've seen things today that challenge everything we believed about our place in the galaxy. Now I ask you, will you help me build something new? The guards exchanged glances, then one by one, they knelt. Not in the formal way of court ceremony, but with genuine devotion. The doors burst open. Nexus strode in, his crystalline form corrupted and dark, surrounded by rebel troops. You betray everything our empire stands for. No, Zalara said calmly. I honor everything it could become. She pressed her hand fully against the throne, and something extraordinary happened. The ancient crystal, older than the empire itself, began to resonate. Energy patterns that had laid dormant for millennia awakened. Kai's eyes widened. Impossible, that's first contact technology, Zalara finished. Left by those who came before. I always wondered why the throne felt incomplete. She smiled at Kai. Until today, when you showed me how humanity helped other civilizations grow beyond their limitations. The throne wasn't meant for conquest. It was meant for this. Light exploded from the crystal throne, washing over everyone in the room. Where it touched the rebels, their corrupted crystal forms began to clear, the darkness within them exposed and dissolved. Nexus staggered back. What are you doing? Showing them the truth. All of it. Just as Kai showed me. Zalara's voice grew stronger. See what humanity has achieved. See how they rose above their violent past. See the future we could build together. Through the throne's power, enhanced by technology even humanity hadn't known existed, Every crystal being in the palace experienced a flood of truth. They saw Earth's history, humanity's secret advancement, and most importantly, they saw the potential future. A partnership between crystal and human that could reshape the galaxy. Rebel troops began lowering their weapons, their forms clearing as understanding replaced fear. Even Nexus, his resistance crumbling, fell to his knees. "How long?" he whispered. "How long have you known about the throne's true purpose?" "I didn't," Zalara admitted. "But I suspected our ancestors were greater than our histories claimed, just as humanity is greater than we believed." She turned to Kai. "Your people have waited centuries for this moment. What happens now?" Kai activated his communications. Above the palace, the human fleet decloaked completely, not as instruments of war, but as a symbol of friendship. Their designs, organic and crystalline, complemented the Crystal Empire's architecture perfectly. "Now," Kai said, offering his hand to Zalara, "we begin the real work. Your empire's technology and humanity's innovation. Your people's strength and our adaptability. Together." Zalara took his hand, no longer as master and slave, but as equals. "Together," she agreed. The throne room filled with light as human representatives began teleporting in, diplomats, scientists, cultural experts, all ready to help guide the Crystal Empire into a new age. Among them were faces Zalara recognized, slaves, who had been gathering intelligence for years, each now revealed in their true roles. But there was no anger at the deception. Instead, there was hope. As human and crystal beings began to mingle, sharing knowledge and possibilities, Zalara felt something she hadn't experienced in centuries: the pure joy of discovery. The Crystal Empire would never be the same. And that, she realized, was exactly what it needed. Above them all, the ancient throne continued to pulse with light, its true purpose finally fulfilled after millennia of waiting. The alliance that its creators had dreamed of was finally beginning. And somewhere in the galaxy, other civilizations watched and waited, knowing their time for transformation would come too. For now, though, all eyes were on the Crystal Palace, where the most unlikely partnership in galactic history was about to change everything. The new era. 1 year after the Crystal Dawn, the transformed Crystal Palace stood as a testament to what cooperation between species could achieve. Its ancient spires now intertwined with flowing organic architecture, a perfect blend of crystalline tradition and human innovation. Queen Zalara stood at the Grand Observatory, watching ships from across the galaxy arrive for the historic Convergence Summit. "Hard to believe it's only been a year," Kai said, joining her at the window. No longer playing the role of slave, he wore the formal attire of Earth's chief diplomatic liaison, though he still moved with the same fluid grace that had once caught Zalara's attention in a slave market. "Sometimes it feels like centuries," Zalara replied, her crystalline form shimmering with newfound vitality. "Other times, like moments." Below them, the capital city pulsed with life. Former slave markets had been transformed into cultural exchange centers. The old military barracks now housed the Joint Innovation Institute, where human and crystal scientists worked together to solve galactic challenges. Most remarkably, crystal beings and humans moved freely among each other, their differences celebrated rather than feared. "The latest reports from the outer colonies are impressive," Kai noted, pulling up a holographic display. "Productivity has increased by 300% since implementing the voluntary cooperation protocols. Turns out people work better when they're not enslaved." "Who knew?" Zalara smiled at his characteristic dry humor. "And the resistance? Minimal now. The last holdouts seem to have accepted that change is inevitable." He paused, considering. "Though I suspect having an unbeatable combined human crystal defense fleet helps with that acceptance." A soft chime announced the arrival of their expected guests. The observatory doors opened to reveal a delegation unlike any the galaxy had seen before. Representatives from 12 previously unknown species entered, civilizations that, like humanity, had hidden their true advancement from the Crystal Empire. "Welcome to New Crystal City," Zalara greeted them. "You honor us with your presence." The lead delegate, a being of pure energy contained in an elegant mechanical form, stepped forward. "The honor is ours, your radiance." We have watched your transformation this past year with great interest. Many of us feared the Crystal Empire could never change. We are pleased to have been proven wrong. Change was always possible, Zalara said, exchanging a glance with Kai. We simply needed to trust in the possibility of something better. The delegation moved to the conference area, where plans for a new galactic alliance would be discussed. But Zalara lingered a moment at the window, remembering. You're thinking about the throne, Kai observed quietly. She nodded. The ancient crystal throne, its true purpose finally fulfilled, had become something more than a symbol of power. It now served as a repository of shared knowledge, a bridge between civilizations. We still don't know who left it, she said, who built such technology and knew that one day we would need it. Perhaps that's the next great mystery for us to solve together, Kai suggested. After all, we've proven that the impossible is simply the undiscovered. A sudden alert drew their attention. The observatory's sensors had detected something extraordinary, a signal, ancient but powerful, emanating from deep space. Its pattern was unlike anything either human or crystal technology had encountered, yet somehow familiar. Another piece of the puzzle? Zalara wondered. Or the beginning of a new one, Kai replied. The question is, are we ready for what we might find? Zalara looked at the gathered delegates, at her transformed empire, at the partnership that had grown from the most unlikely of beginnings. Together, she said, I believe we're ready for anything. As if in response, the signal pulsed stronger, calling them toward the next great adventure. In the space of 1 year, the Crystal Empire had evolved from a civilization built on conquest to one leading the way toward galactic cooperation. The transformation wasn't always easy. Change never was, but it was proof that even the oldest of empires could learn new ways. Above them, the 3 moons of the crystal world shone down on a civilization reborn. Ships from a dozen worlds moved in perfect harmony through the stellar dance. And in countless corners of the galaxy, other civilizations watched and wondered if perhaps they too were ready for change. The story of the slave who became an ally, of the queen who dared to transform her empire, would be told for generations to come. But it wasn't the end of the story, merely the beginning of a much greater one. For in the vast expanse of space, where endless possibilities awaited, the combined knowledge and strength of humanity and the Crystal Empire would light the way forward. Not through conquest or subjugation, but through understanding, cooperation, and the simple truth that had started it all. The greatest power in the universe wasn't in dominating others, but in helping them rise to their full potential. As the signal from deep space continued its mysterious call, Zalara and Kai joined their guests, ready to write the next chapter in their extraordinary journey. The future stretched before them, infinite in its possibilities, waiting to be shaped by this remarkable alliance that had begun with a queen's curiosity and a slave who was never really a slave at all. The new era had truly begun.